Recording. This is a script called Bound by Sarah Day. Dover, UK, present day. Interior Donald's cabin. A train is running alongside a beach. It passes the white cliffs of Dover and into a hillside tunnel. As it leaves the tunnel, some hands are revealed through it, hard at work cleaning and painting a figurine of a train engineer. The camera follows through the tunnel and reveals Donald, 19, autistic, fixates on special interests, primarily model railways, as a way of escaping from real life, which he finds confusing and intimidating. He longs for companionship, maybe even love, but he's not sure what that is for him yet. It is revealed that the train is part of a large model railway, almost spanning the room. It's impressive, immaculate, and well kept. The only splash of colour is in the room. Donald's cabin is an extension on top of a garage. There is outside access through a door that leads to steps down the side of the house, but there's also a door that leads to the main hallway of the house. The cabin is faintly lit by table lamps carefully placed to aid detailed work, but also creates curious shadows across the space. It's the sort of place you feel like you're trespassing and yet can't help but take a few more steps inside, like a child reading Wet Paint Don't Touch. A radio is sat on top of a bookshelf full of maths and train books. The radio is playing in the background, although Donald appears to take no notice. His tongue is sticking out due to concentration as he delicately paints the figurine. His glasses are slightly steamed and a trickle of sweat starts its journey from his forehead. A light flickers, almost waking Donald from his trance, and he wipes the beads of sweat from his brow.
Welcome back to Dover Live. This is Sally Magerson. In the early hours of the morning, a lorry was seized in Dover containing approximately 150 refugees. As soon as the shutters opened, those who were able-bodied ran for their freedom. Home Secretary Lisa Morgan addressed the issue this morning.
If you're listening, please know that we understand your pain and suffering, and there is no need to hide. Help is at hand. Please come forward so that our medical teams can check you're okay.
And now on to the weather with Rachael Parker.
Donald is still deeply focused on his work. A slight smile winks on Donald's lips as he lifts the train engineer figurine into the light. His work is done and he places the piece onto the platform ready to start work. Donald takes a deep breath and stretches his neck.
Another blustery week ahead for us in the southeast. The Met Office have issued a weather warning and advised us all to stay well clear of the coast, with record-breaking waves approaching.
Donald notices a spot of paint on his shoe and bends down to flick it off. He hears a voice call, "Donald, dinner!" He bumps the table slightly with his head, which knocks over some of his well-thought-out scene, including the new engineer who is waiting patiently on the platform. To Donald's horror, he falls onto the tracks just as the train is about to pull into the station. Donald reaches for the controller and frantically presses buttons, but the train keeps on rolling. He goes to switch the train off at the wall and trips over his own feet, hitting his hip on the side of the table, which makes Donald wince. Finally, he reaches the plug and switches off the power just in time. Donald sighs with relief. He reaches towards the engineer. "Donald, it'll get cold." Donald reluctantly withdraws his hand and retreats. He leaves the chaos at the station and exits via the cabin door, rubbing his bruised hip as he goes. We are alone in the cabin, or so we think. We hear a squeak of a cupboard door placed just behind where Donald was standing. Two hands appear around the frame of the door and push it open gently. We never see their face, but the figure climbs out of the cupboard and walks towards the train scene. The hand fingers the train tracks with admiration before reaching towards the fallen engineer. They carefully collect the engineer and put them back in their rightful place. Interior dining room. The family dining room is traditional and neutral. Pictures of Donald and the family taken at professional studio grace the walls. The smiles are for the camera. Donald is sat awkwardly at the table opposite his dad, Peter, 54, Taurus, always right, a man's man, proud of his country. There are no smiles here. Donald's mum, Sharon, 50, human sunshine, cares for everyone as if they're her own, making herself smaller around certain people, walks in. She is still in her nurse's uniform and her smile breaks any awkward tension. She places the plates of dinner in front of them both and sits down. "How was your day, Donnie?"
I think there's a short in my circuit.
"Yeah, if anyone can fix it, I'm sure you can." Sharon reaches over to Donald and gives his arm a squeeze. Donald smiles at her, and then the smile disappears fairly quickly.
I don't know. Might need a new chip. I'm not spending more money on that thing. You can buy whatever you want when you start earning your own money. But the Bank of Dad is officially closed now. You're on an internship.
Peter?
Got you onto the plumbing course at Dover Tech. You start Monday.
Peter takes a huge bite of his food and speaks with a full mouth.
Aren't you gonna thank me? Thank you.
Awkward silence other than the scratching of plates. There is a knock at the front door. I'll get it.
No. Donald.
A tense beat as both parents look at Donald, whose eyes are wide.
Donald, get the door.
It's fine, Peter. I'm sure it's just... Peter shoots Sharon a look, which stops her finishing the sentence. Donald wipes the sweaty palms and pushes his hair from the table to stand up. Donald walks Tin Man-like towards the front doorway. Interior front hallway. Donald's hands are shaking now, and he tries to swallow the saliva that is filling his mouth. He's close to the glass now, and we can see a silhouette of a man on the other side. It's Terry, 50s, their friendly and harmless next-door neighbour.
Donald, it's me, Terry.
Terry looks through the glass, which makes Donald stand back.
I've got the second-hand clothes that your mum asked for. Said she'd take it down to the hospital.
Donald lifts a shaking hand to the door handle.
I'll just leave them here then. See that she gets them, won't you?
Donald shuts and opens the door, snatches the bag from Terry and shuts it.
What the?
Donald storms into the living room, paces off his adrenaline and shaking his hand free from energy. Sharon rushes in. Hey, it's okay, it's okay. Donald stands stiff as a board, red-faced and clenched fists as if he's about to blow. Sharon holds onto him tight and we see him release. Interior, Donald's cabin after dinner. The front door of the cabin opens and the light fills the room. Donald quickly gets back to work. He reaches for the engineer on the track but realises he's no longer there. The engineer is back on the platform. We can hear his parents arguing downstairs.
It's for his own good. He can't sit in here all day.
Peter, he is an adult.
Then he'd better start acting like one.
He can make his own decisions.
Can he?
Donald reaches for the engineer. His eyes look from the figurine to train scene in disbelief. How did he get there? He reaches for a cloth and starts to clean it and repaint. Hurricane Peter enters, followed by Sharon. They talk about Donald as if he's not there. He doesn't want to be a plumber, Pete. When has he ever been interested in that? Have you ever bothered asking him what he's interested in?
Do you realise how many strings I had to pull to get him on that course? Nobody wants him.
Donald's head hangs lower. What's your tone?
Don't make me laugh. He's not even listening, are you?
Peter storms over to Donald and grabs the passenger out of his hand.
Are you?
Donald recoils.
I put my neck on the line for you. If you make me look like a mug, you can kiss all this goodbye.
Peter gestures to the model. Donald's eyes widen.
You'll be there Monday morning. End of conversation.
Peter throws down the figurine to the floor and leaves. Sharon goes back to pick up the figure. Another dinner ending in disaster. At least this time no one can blame my cooking. She hands the figurine to Donald, who cradles it safely. You don't help yourself, Donnie, you know. We're trying to do what's best for you, but you just don't... You might enjoy it, being out of the house, learning a new skill.
What if I meet a bully?
What if you meet a friend? Like Terry, he's my friend. He won't hurt you, my love.
He could hurt you.
It can be scary meeting new people, but it can also be really wonderful too. You can help each other, be there for each other, share stories and things like we do for each other, don't we, Donald? Donald diverts his eyes away from his mum. Would you like to make some more friends, Donald? Donald nods. Donald's eyes widen and connect to his mum's. There's a slight sparkle to them.
More than anything. People think I'm weird, though.
Sharon strokes Donald's head and then looks towards the door. No sign of Peter causes her to continue. Get your head down, work hard, get 100% attendance, and I'll treat us to tickets to the London Model exhibition next month. What you say? Both of us could do with a day out.
Thanks, Mum.
Sharon strokes Donald's hair and kisses at the top of his head. Don't stay out too late. Sharon leaves. Donald continues to clean the figures. Once Donald puts the figurine back in its rightful place. Donald picks up the train that failed earlier and takes it off the tracks. He flicks the switch and the scene is alive again. When Donald is in the train world, he doesn't notice anything else around him. Donald's eyes follow the train as it rushes through the tunnel. I think it's supposed to be train there. As the train leaves the tunnel, he is shocked to see one eye looking straight back at him. He quickly hides under the table, curled up in a ball. He holds his breath in fear. All we can hear is the train rushing around the scene. It feels like it's getting louder and faster. The cupboard door closes shut. Donald reaches his hand up towards the table surface and pads around for something. His hand clasps a pair of scissors and he pulls them close to his chest. His fingers slide up and down the blade as he pieces his thoughts together. His eyes focus on something ahead of him, a toolbox. He leaves the scissors on the floor next to him and crawls over to the toolbox. He lifts the lid, rummages around and lands on a screwdriver. He looks at it in detail and begins to stand. Donald promptly drops the screwdriver on the floor as he notices a hammer mounted to the wall. He walks over and lifts it down. It's heavy. Slowly, step by step, Donald makes his way towards the cupboard. His free hand reaches for the cupboard door handle. He takes a deep breath in. He opens the door and lifts the hammer high in the air, ready to strike. Rachael, 21, Syrian, determined and brave, protective of his family, has the power to manipulate situations and people, is cowering in the corner of the cupboard, closing his eyes as if that will make him invisible.
Did you say Percy?
Rachael's eyes slowly open and his head turns to meet Donald's eyes. Sorry about that, everyone. Didn't realise Sharon had quite so much to say. So one of you could have done that. But anyway, so I'm going to go through my notes because I did look at the first couple of pages as I was going through the characters earlier. I should have realised, shouldn't I, as I was going through the characters, but usually I just go through and pick up their names rather than see how much they had to read. So first of all, it sounds like it's going to have a great story to it because we've got a guy in a cupboard and we didn't realize he was a Syrian refugee, presumably, and that's a great reveal. However, and the dialogue is fantastic as well, I should say. The dialogue's very realistic. No problems there. The script, however, doesn't read like a script. It reads like a novel, and there's way too much detail in it for a script. First of all, you need a title page, and you also need to get your scene headings right. That Dover, UK present day needs to be part of your scene heading. So interior, Donald's cabin, Dover, day is all you need. The present day is implied always in a script, and the only time you really need to say when it is if it's historical. So and then what I've done here in my notes is you've got a train is running along a beach, it passes the white cliffs of Dover and into a hillside tunnel, but you've just told us that it's Donald's cabin. So the first thing that we've got is we're going, okay, this is inside Donald's cabin, but there's a train running alongside a track. And we have no idea at that point that that is a model railway because you haven't told us. You've just said, there's a train running alongside a beach. So there's a disconnect there instantly. So what you really need to do is establish right at the top that it is a model railway. And I think also you need a little bit of indication about how you would do that because you clearly want us to see the room in its wider extent a little bit later. So you want us to focus on that train. So how you would do that in a script is you would say interior, Donald's cabin, day, close on, a model train as it runs on its tracks past a mock-up of the White Cliffs of Dover. And then I made a note to myself because I picked this up later. Later on that same page, you talk about the radio playing. The radio is already playing when we're in this scene. So you need to put that in early. You've got a model train as it runs on its track past a mock-up of the White Cliffs of Dover. A radio plays soft music off screen, OS. That's establishing that there is a radio playing. Then you say, the train leaves the tunnel, point of view through the tunnel to Donald, 19, autistic, fixated on this model railway, who is painting a figurine. That's all you need to set that up. You don't need all the rest of it. Okay, you don't need the interior stuff about him escaping from real life, which he finds confusing and intimidating. He longs for companionship. How do we know that? How do we see that on the screen? And it's not in dialogue, and it's not possible to tell that from somebody. You're giving instructions to the director and the actor, and so they will need to get that information from the character as they create that character for themselves, you know, and they may decide to play them some differently to that, you know. So then I'd say after that, I'd say pull back to reveal the full model railway. The next paragraph, which starts, Donald cabin is an extension on top of a garage. There is outside access. I would say you need to précis that heavily. Just reduce it completely to a couple of lines. And the radio bit I've covered, because then what you've got is you've established that the radio is playing in the background, and then when the voice comes on, it's not like it makes sense then to have that voice come on at that point. What you'll find by doing that also is that you won't have as long a script. It will shorten all the action, and so at the moment you've not got a real sense of time through this at all, because it's a minute a page, but how would you know what that could be? That could happen in about 10 seconds, you know. And everyone else will talk about the rest of it, but I thought I would just say that as far as script formatting. The other thing is sounds need to be in caps. Okay, over to you, Erin.
Sorry, I'm scribbling notes. What you said kind of was making me think. I think that the description, I'm not against like descriptions if they're like necessary. And when you're saying this reads as a novel, this writer is a beautiful writer. But I definitely think you could tighten a lot of that stuff up and show us instead of tell us. Also, I'm curious if there's some sort of alternate reality, like the Lego movie or like Dinner for Schmucks, like where, like in Dinner for Schmucks, Steve Carell's character's like into taxidermy and stuff, but it kind of like there's an alternate like reality within the characters that he's created. Kind of like the Lego movie is more focused on the Legos, but then it pulls out and like it's a little boy and his father like creating this world, right? I'm curious, because I mean it's very rooted in reality, but it's also kind of talking about this Donald's mind. So I wondered if maybe that would be the model train thing would be more of an alternate reality that's we're not sure at first that it's actually his creation and not like a real like train conductor or something, or a stamp in his brain that he saw like one time when he was a child or something that just stayed with him. Donald read older to me a little bit than 19. I don't know. I don't know why. I kept going back to double check what his age was for some reason. But I'm curious about the relationship with the neighbor and if like he's hot and cold with him, or if like it's always like this neighbor's always trying and he just is very non-social and struggles a lot with that, which I think is a really a beautiful thing to explore for a like lead character. Like I really like that. And as far as like Starved for Love, maybe there's some sort of like poster or picture that he has of someone that like maybe he'd want a relationship with. I'm not sure, maybe. And I don't know. I don't know what else. It's very, very well written though, like the dialogue and stuff too. Like I said, she's a beautiful writer, and I'm curious to see when it's tightened up, like what the rest of the story is. Like the little twist on page 10 was really, really cool. So, sorry. Next person, take it away.
Thank you. Thank you. Emma.
Um, I've got a lot of time for this actually. I know that we need to sort of tighten down, but I think there's some lovely stuff in it. I was really delighted to have a place and a time, I must say, because as you know, we very seldom get any of those things. So it was a delight, even though, as you say, it's implicit that it's the present. But there are some very nice things in it. Yeah, I got confused about the first. I wasn't sure what to picture during the first paragraph because I was thinking, what hand? How can we see the hand? And I realized it's a big hand and a little train and everything. So yeah, obviously we need to be able to picture it quite clearly. I really liked there being a thing, like there being a film. I'm guessing it is short film. I'm not sure, but there's a film about model railways because I've just been doing an audiobook about them, and my stepfather's a big fan of them, and I think there's a lot of charm to be had. And just when we hear the radio and we hear about people, refugees running for freedom, you immediately think, this is going to be an interesting collision. So I was very, very delighted that I thought, yeah, there must be somebody who's going to meet him, and somehow there's going to be some connection or possibly conflict about these trains. So I was quite interested to see how this worked. I liked the way that Sarah chose to describe her people. I've never had a script where somebody's been described as a Taurus. I don't know what it meant. It was very interesting. I thought the relationships though were really interesting, as well as the dialogue is mostly, I think, it doesn't need much sort of breaking up. Sometimes people have lots of full sentences and people saying this is not and no contractions, but it's mostly sounding quite like spoken language. I liked it that there were lots of opportunities in this so far for female voices. That's always a nice thing. And just a couple of tiny things. Is a course the same as an internship? I thought the course internships were like work experience, just unpaid work really. There's a little tiny thing with Terry in his last speech. I can't find it now, but he talks about the clothes. He says them, or it's the clothes, and he says it. So just tiny things to tidy when you're going back and just making the sort of stage directions more concise, the action. On page 7, Donald has the engineer in his hand, but his dad snatches the passenger from his hand. So I don't know if they're different ones, but I just feel like there's maybe some bits of like different versions, sort of ghosts of those maybe hanging around. Yeah, just some really, I think there's good potential. I'm very, very interested to see how this works out. So yeah, I'm very intrigued.
Cool, thank you. Rachael.
Yeah, I also liked some of the found some of the descriptions interesting. Human sunshine. Wow, that's beautiful. Yeah, I thought it was a good story. I think the audience will definitely get sympathy for Donald straight away. The reveal at the end is really good, and I think maybe we could bring that in a bit quicker. Whilst I think your story is obviously very important to get enough about the character and their situation and their relationship with the trains, which is obviously important, out. I think Akhil can come in a little bit sooner. And obviously that will happen if you're cutting down some of the description anyway. For some reason I love the bit where the guy is about to get hit by the train as well. I was like, I of course I know it's a model train set, but I think this person is really invested and that comes across really well. Also agree with Erin a little bit in that I pictured Donald as an elderly gentleman initially when I was reading it, and then obviously it became clear when Mum and Dad came in and were talking about what he needed to do with his life. Yeah, I think it's going to be good. Once you sort of tighten it up a bit.
Oh, thank you, John.
Yes, I mean, capitalise on what everybody else has said. It's really good. I think the lines, the speaking parts, the dialogue, as it were, is beautifully written, and it sounds real. It feels real, even when it's on the page. Yes, there's far too much descriptive stuff in there, far too much, but it's beautifully written, and I really want to know where it's going.
That's
Sorry,
it.
that's
Yeah.
it. It is
Fantastic.
beautifully written.
Yes, thank you for that. So I hope that's been useful to you, Sarah. We love it. Just need to tighten up the action, I think, a little more. Get your head around formatting, and you'll be there. Thank you.